Every great collection begins with the realization that history is not just found in textbooks. It is often hiding in plain sight, quietly resting in our pockets and forgotten jars. For generations, the wheat penny has captured the imagination of the American public and serious numismatists alike. Designed by Victor David Brenner and first released in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, this iconic copper coin features a dignified portrait of the 16th president on the obverse and two curving wheat stalks framing the denomination on the reverse. While millions of these coins were produced over a span of nearly 50 years, not all wheat pennies are created equal. Some were born during times of global conflict, struck from recycled war materials, or shaped by spectacular manufacturing accidents that turned ordinary pocket change into legendary numismatic treasures. To the untrained eye, heavily circulated wheat pennies may look like nothing more than obsolete currency, but experienced collectors know that careful examination can reveal incredible stories of rarity, preservation, and historical significance. Today, we are taking a closer look at 4 fascinating years in the life of the wheat penny. We will explore the economic circumstances that shape them, the technical specifications that define them, and the critical details that separate common circulation finds from elite, authenticated masterpieces that command extraordinary premiums in the competitive collector marketplace. 1942. Wheat penny. The year 1942 represented a period of profound global uncertainty and rapid mobilization as the United States officially entered the Second World War following the attack on Pearl Harbor. This massive geopolitical shift had a direct and immediate impact on American manufacturing, and the United States Mint was not immune to the drastic changes sweeping the nation. Copper, the primary metal used in the production of the wheat penny, suddenly became a critical strategic material required for the manufacturing of ammunition, communication wire, and military equipment. As the year progressed, government officials realized that producing billions of small cent coins from pure copper alloys was an unsustainable drain on resources essential for the war effort. Consequently, 1942 stands as the final year before the Mint initiated radical metallurgical experiments, making it a pivotal transitional issue in the history of American coinage. Despite the looming metal shortages, the 1942 wheat penny was struck using the traditional pre-war bronze composition consisting of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. These coins maintained the standard specifications that had defined the series for decades, featuring a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, a plain edge, and a weight of approximately 3.11 grams. Production was absolutely massive as the wartime economy roared to life, requiring vast amounts of small change to facilitate daily transactions in booming industrial centers. The Philadelphia Mint, operating without a mint mark as was customary at the time, produced an astonishing number of these coins. Meanwhile, the Denver Mint proudly stamped its familiar D mint mark beneath the date, and the San Francisco Mint contributed its own substantial run, identified by the S mint mark. With combined mintages reaching into the hundreds of millions, the 1942 wheat penny is universally considered a highly common coin in everyday circulated grades. Millions of these pieces survived the war and were tucked away in albums and cigar boxes, meaning that examples showing heavy wear, flattened wheat stalks, and darkened surfaces usually carry only a nominal premium over their face value. However, the sheer abundance of circulated examples often creates a misleading impression about the true rarity of the 1942 wheat penny in exceptional condition. High-speed, high-volume production at the Mint placed enormous stress on the steel dies used to strike the coins. As a result, finding an example that escaped the Mint with a fully realized, razor-sharp strike is remarkably difficult. Furthermore, because copper is a highly reactive metal, coins that were not immediately preserved began to oxidize, turning from a brilliant red to a muted brown. This is where the meticulous science of professional grading completely transforms the market value of the coin. Grading services evaluate uncirculated coins on the internationally recognized Sheldon scale, paying incredibly close attention to the preservation of the original mint luster, the absence of distracting contact marks, and the quality of the strike. More importantly, copper coins receive specific color designations: brown, red-brown, and the highly coveted full red. A 1942 wheat penny that has survived over 8 decades while retaining its original blazing full red mint brilliance is a legitimate condition rarity. When elite registry set collectors hunt for the finest known examples of the 1942 wheat penny, they demand visual perfection. A certified Mint State 67 full red example, displaying virtually flawless surfaces and deep, uninterrupted cartwheel luster, can easily command hundreds or even thousands of dollars at a major numismatic auction. The difference in value between a slightly faded Mint State 64 and a spectacular Mint State 67 is astronomical, emphasizing the fact that in the realm of modern coin collecting, preservation is often far more important than the date printed on the coin. Beyond pure condition, the 1942 wheat penny is also famous for a variety of fascinating mint errors and die varieties. Because the mint was operating under immense wartime pressure, quality control occasionally slipped. Advanced collectors meticulously examine these coins as under magnification, searching for doubled dies, clippage planchets, broad strikes, and dramatic off-center strikes. While the 1942 issue does not boast a universally famous double die on the scale of later years, highly noticeable repunched mint marks on the Denver and San Francisco issues provide an accessible and exciting avenue for variety specialists. It is absolutely crucial, however, for newer collectors to understand the difference between a genuine mint-made error and post-mint damage. Environmental corrosion, chemical cleaning, and intentional physical manipulation are frequently misrepresented by unscrupulous online sellers as rare errors. Reputable auction houses and serious buyers rely exclusively on coins that have been independently authenticated and encapsulated by trusted third-party grading services, ensuring that the premium paid reflects genuine numismatic rarity rather than artificial alteration. Ultimately, the 1942 wheat penny serves as a tangible artifact of a nation standing on the brink of total war, preserving a moment in time just before the familiar copper penny temporarily vanished from the American landscape. 1944. Wheat penny. In the timeline of American numismatics, 1944 stands as a remarkable year of restoration, resourcefulness, and unexpected rarity. To truly understand the significance of the 1944 wheat penny, one must first look back at the disaster of the previous year. In 1943, in a desperate bid to conserve copper for the war effort, the United States Mint produced pennies out of zinc-coated steel. The public reaction was overwhelmingly negative. The steel scents rusted rapidly when exposed to sweat and humidity, turning into unattractive, dark gray discs. Worse still, because of their silvery appearance, they were constantly confused with dimes in everyday commerce, leading to widespread frustration among merchants and consumers. Recognizing that the steel penny experiment was a functional failure, the Mint urgently sought a way to return the 1-cent piece to its traditional copper color without disrupting the supply of raw materials needed by the military. The solution they devised was both brilliant and highly symbolic. Beginning in 1904, the United States Mint began recycling spent brass ammunition shell casings retrieved from military training facilities and distant battlefields. These salvaged casings were melted down, slightly augmented with additional copper, and rolled into planchets to strike the new pennies. This unique wartime alloy consisted of 95% copper and 5% zinc, completely eliminating the tin that had been a standard component of the pre-war bronze composition. Although the visual appearance of the 1904 shell case wheat penny was virtually identical to the older bronze coins, this hidden metallurgical change makes it one of the most historically evocative coins ever produced by the United States. Every time a citizen received a 1944 penny and change, they were literally holding recycled materials that had directly contributed to the war effort. The public enthusiastically welcomed the return of the copper-colored penny, and the Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco worked at a blistering pace to replace the despised steel cents. Total mintage across all three facilities exceeded an astonishing 2 billion coins, making the standard 1944 wheat penny one of the most common coins of the 20th century. Because billions were struck and subsequently saved by a patriotic public, standard circulated examples of the 1944 wheat penny carry very little financial value today. You can still easily find them in inherited collections, old jars, and occasionally even in modern pocket change. However, as is the case with all heavily produced coins, finding an example that possesses flawless preservation, a razor-sharp strike, and blinding original red luster is a completely different story. The immense pressure placed on the working dies often resulted in coins with soft, mushy details, particularly in the lines of the wheat ears on the reverse and the fine hair details of Lincoln's portrait on the obverse. Advanced collectors seeking to complete top-tier registry sets will pay substantial premiums for professionally graded Mint State 67 full red examples. These elite survivors represent a tiny fraction of the total mintage, proving once again that in the collector marketplace, exceptional condition always triumphs over sheer abundance. Yet, the true legend of the 1944 wheat penny does not revolve around the billions of standard shell-case coins. It centers on one of the most famous and valuable mint errors in the history of the world. During the chaotic transition from the 1943 steel planchets back to the 1944 copper alloy planchets, a small number of leftover zinc-coated steel blanks remain lodged in the giant tote bins used to transport planchets to the coining presses. As the new 1944 dies were installed and production began, these stray steel blanks were fed into the presses and struck with the 1944 date. The result was the legendary 1944 steel wheat penny. Unlike the standard copper-colored coins of that year, these incredibly rare errors look exactly like the 1943 steel pennies, but bear the 1944 date. It is estimated that only a few dozen of these coins exist across all three mints. When an authenticated 1944 steel penny appears at a major auction, it routinely commands prices well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, making it a true holy grail for wealthy error specialists. Because the potential financial reward is so staggering, the 1944 steel penny has also become one of the most frequently faked coins in existence. Counterfeiters often take genuine 1944 copper pennies and plate them with zinc or lead to mimic the appearance of steel. Others will take a common 1943 steel penny and use precision tools to alter the 3 into a 4. Fortunately, knowledgeable collectors and professional authenticators use two simple but foolproof methods to expose these frauds. The first is the magnet test. A genuine standard 1944 copper penny will not react to a magnet. A fake silver-plated 1944 copper penny will also ignore a magnet. However, a genuine 1944 steel penny will jump instantly to a magnet due to its steel core. The second line of defense is precise weight. The standard 1944 shell-case copper coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams, whereas the genuine 1944 steel planchet weighs noticeably less, at exactly 2.70 grams. Any variation from these specifications immediately exposes an altered coin. Because of the rampant deception surrounding this famous date, no serious auction house or dealer will ever purchase or sell a suspected 1944 steel penny unless it has been rigorously authenticated and encapsulated by a premier third-party grading service. For the average collector, the standard 1944 shell-case wheat penny remains a beautiful, inexpensive piece of World War II history, while the elusive 1944 steel penny serves as a permanent reminder that the most extraordinary treasures are often created by the simplest manufacturing accidents. 1948 wheat penny. The year 1948 represented a massive turning point for the American people, characterized by a return to normalcy and the dawn of a spectacular peacetime economic boom. The struggles and rationing of the Second World War were finally receding into memory. Millions of soldiers had returned home, families were relocating to newly constructed suburbs, and a surging consumer culture was reshaping the nation. This wave of unprecedented economic activity required a vast and reliable supply of circulating coinage to fuel local businesses, vending machines, and retail stores. In the realm of the United States Mint, this era of stability meant that the metallurgical experiments and emergency measures of the early 1940s were permanently retired. The 1948 wheat penny marks a confident return to the traditional, pre-war bronze composition that had defined the coin since its inception. The Mint officially discarded the recycled shell-case copper alloy used from 1944 to 1946 and resumed striking pennies with the classic mixture of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. The coin maintained the standard weight of 3.1 grams and the familiar 18.05 millimeter diameter. Production was robust, matching the energy of the post-war economy. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 217 million examples without a mint mark. The Denver Mint added over 172 million bearing the D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint struck over 81 million identified by the S mint mark. Because these coins were produced in such massive quantities during a time of peace and prosperity, they saw heavy, daily use in everyday commerce. As a direct consequence, the overwhelming majority of surviving 1948 wheat pennies today are heavily worn, displaying flattened details on Lincoln's cheek and smooth, featureless wheat stalks on the reverse. These circulated examples are highly common and easily obtainable for just a few cents over their face value, making them an excellent entry point for novice collectors attempting to complete a standard date and mint album. However, when we shift our focus to the highest echelons of numismatic preservation, the story of the 1948 wheat penny becomes vastly more complex and intriguing. The late 1940s were notorious for uneven quality control at the mint facilities. Dyes were frequently overused to meet the high demand for coinage, resulting in late-stage dye deterioration. Many uncirculated 1948 pennies exhibit a soft, almost mushy strike, lacking the crisp, definitive lines that collectors desire. Furthermore, the standard bronze alloy is incredibly susceptible to environmental degradation. Even coins that were placed in paper rolls or early cardboard albums often succumb to moisture, sulfur in the air, or the natural oils from human fingertips, turning dark brown, developing unattractive carbon spots, or suffering from dull, muted surfaces. Therefore, locating a 1948 wheat penny that combines a bold, fully realized strike with pristine, spot-free surfaces and vibrant, full red color is a monumental challenge. Professional grading services employ strict standards when evaluating these post-war pennies. A coin that has retained its original mint brilliance but shows a few minor contact marks might secure a respectable mint state 64 or 65 grade. But the true financial premiums are reserved for those incredibly rare survivors that achieve a grade of mint state 67 full red. At this elite level, the coin must exhibit unbroken, swirling luster, virtually zero visible marks, even under magnification, and exceptional eye appeal. When such a flawless example of a 1948 wheat penny crosses the auction block, it attracts aggressive bidding from registry set competitors who demand absolute perfection. A coin that is worth just 3 cents in worn condition can easily realize hundreds or thousands of dollars if it possesses this verified top-tier preservation. This massive disparity in value underlines a foundational rule of modern coin collecting. Rarity is rarely dictated by how many coins were originally made, but rather by how many have miraculously survived in their original state of manufacture. In addition to condition rarities, specialized collectors also scrutinize the 1948 wheat penny for interesting die varieties and mint errors. While this specific year does not harbor any massive, headline-grabbing doubled dies, it is well known for several intricate, repunched mint marks, particularly on the Denver and San Francisco issues. A repunched mint mark occurs when the letter punch was struck into the working die more than once at slightly different angles, leaving a visible secondary outline of the D or S. For variety hunters armed with high-powered loops, discovering a strong repunched mint mark adds an exciting layer of scholarship to an otherwise common coin. Furthermore, genuine off-center strikes, where the planche was not properly seated in the retaining bar, occasionally surface from this year. As always, collectors are strongly cautioned against purchasing raw, uncertified error coins from unverified sources, as post-mint damage such as garage alterations, vice jobs, and chemical cleaning are frequently passed off as legitimate mint errors. Proper handling by the edges, storage in inert, archival quality capsules, and reliance on independent third-party authentication remain the best practices for anyone seeking to preserve or invest in these fascinating relics of America's post-war boom. 1955 Wheat Penny. The 1955 wheat penny occupies a position of unparalleled prestige in the world of modern American numismatics. It is a coin that transcends the standard boundaries of the hobby, recognized not just by dedicated collectors, but by the general public as an icon of mid-century Americana. By 1955, the wheat penny design had been in continuous production for 46 years, and discussions were already underway regarding a potential redesign to commemorate the upcoming 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, a change that would eventually materialize as the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959. Consequently, the 1955 issue represents one of the final chapters of the beloved wheat reverse. Under normal circumstances, this year would have been recorded as just another standard high-production issue. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints collectively produced over 500 million standard bronze pennies that year, all adhering to the familiar 95% copper composition, 3.11-gram weight, and 19.05 millimeter diameter. Most of these regular strike coins circulated heavily, and today they represent affordable, easily acquired pieces for everyday hobbyists. However, an extraordinary mechanical failure at the Philadelphia Mint completely altered the legacy of the 1955 wheat penny, creating what is arguably the most famous and universally desired error coin in United States history, the 1955 double die obverse. To comprehend why the 1955 double die obverse is so spectacular, one must understand the complex process used to create the steel dies that strike the coins. During this era, a working die was created by pressing a hardened master hub into a softened steel die blank to ensure that the design was fully transferred with proper depth and relief. This hubbing process required multiple impressions. Between each impression, the die was removed, heated to soften the steel, and then placed back under the hub for a second strike. In the case of the famous 1955 error, a working die at the Philadelphia Mint was accidentally rotated slightly between the first and second hubbing. As a result, the die received two distinct, deeply misaligned impressions of the obverse design. When this defective die was loaded into the coining press, it began striking pennies with a massive, dramatically doubled image. The doubling is not subtle, it requires no magnification to see. The date, 1955, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear to be practically printed twice, side by side, in bold relief. The portrait of Lincoln, however, remained relatively sharp because it was positioned near the center of the die, where the rotation had the least visual impact. It is estimated that this single defective die operated for a full overnight shift, striking between 20,000 and 24,000 of these dramatically doubled pennies before a mint inspector finally noticed the catastrophic error. Under normal protocol, the entire bin of defective coins would have been immediately melted down. However, in this specific instance, the error coins had already been mixed with millions of standard pennies. The mint supervisors determined that it would be too costly and time-consuming to sort through millions of coins to retrieve the 20,000 errors. So they made the fateful decision to simply release them into circulation, assuming the public wouldn't notice or care. They were spectacularly wrong. The majority of these error coins were shipped to the New England area, specifically upstate New York and Massachusetts. In a fascinating twist of fate, many of them were placed inside cellophane packs of cigarettes as change. At the time, a pack of cigarettes in a vending machine cost 23 cents, and machines only accepted quarters. To return the 2 cents change, vendors would slip 2 pennies inside the packaging. Soon, people opening their cigarette packs were astonished to find these bizarre double-printed pennies. The discovery triggered a massive nationwide treasure hunt, generating sensational headlines in local newspapers and firmly establishing coin collecting as a mainstream American hobby. Today, the 1955 double die obverse is a numismatic blue chip. Because so many were discovered early and pulled from circulation, a significant number survive in relatively high grades. An authenticated example in lightly circulated, about uncirculated condition routinely sells for several $1,000s, while pristine mint state full red examples can command prices exceeding $30,000 to $50,000 at auction. However, the immense popularity and value of this coin have spawned an entire industry of fakes, alterations, and misunderstandings. The most common point of confusion for inexperienced collectors involves a completely different phenomenon known as machine doubling, often referred to as the poor man's doubled die. Machine doubling occurs when a loose die shifts slightly at the exact moment of impact, creating a flat, shelf-like smearing of the final digit of the date. This is incredibly common on standard 1955 pennies and carries almost zero premium. Furthermore, countless counterfeit 1955 double dies have been manufactured overseas and flooded the online market. These fakes often exhibit incorrect weight, poor metal quality, and lack the specific, microscopic die markers that authenticators use to verify genuine examples. Because of this high risk of fraud, purchasing a raw, uncertified 1955 double die is considered highly dangerous. Serious buyers insist that any specimen changing hands must be strictly authenticated and encased in a tamper-evident holder by a highly respected third-party grading service. Even setting the legendary double die aside, the standard 1955 wheat penny remains an exciting challenge for high-end registry collectors. Finding a standard non-error 1955 Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco issue in absolute flawless state 67 full red condition is incredibly difficult due to the generally poor strike quality and spotting issues prevalent during that year. These elite standard strikes can also command significant premiums, proving that true condition rarity applies to every coin, regardless of whether it harbors a spectacular error. The 1955 wheat penny, in all its forms, encapsulates the ultimate appeal of numismatics. It combines deep historical context, mechanical intrigue, the thrill of the hunt, and the critical importance of meticulous authentication into one small, iconic copper canvas. It stands as a permanent reminder to always look closely at the change in your pocket, because sometimes an ordinary coin can turn out to be a piece of history worth a fortune.